After the Detroit Pistons bought out Blake Griffin, he will be available for any team to sign after he clears waivers tomorrow. So with that in mind, and the Toronto Raptors needing a forward, should they add Blake Griffin and look for his signature? Let's get into it. Welcome to Amateur Sports. This is the channel where you get NBA content with a focus on the Toronto Raptors. So if it is your first time here with me today and you like what you see, you want more of myself talking about the Raptors in content just like this, make sure you hit that like button to help us reach some new viewers, and subscribe to Amateur Sports for more content just like this. We do a ton of videos, we do a ton of live stream watch-alongs. We'll also be doing a live stream tomorrow for the NBA All-Star Game. If you want to go check that out, the streams are a lot of fun. You will definitely enjoy. But today's video, we're talking about Blake Griffin yet again. And Blake Griffin, he's going to clear waivers tomorrow. There's no way anybody's going to claim him off waivers. And Blake Griffin will be available to anybody to sign. Anybody who wants his signature can bring him in. And it's a very good sign for a lot of teams that they wanted Blake Griffin, that he did get bought out, because he was on an absolutely monstrous contract with the Detroit Pistons. A very brutal and ugly contract, and the Pistons will wipe their hands clean and look towards the future without Blake Griffin on their team. They've been sitting him out for a while now, looking for a trade partner, but Blake Griffin has really fallen off to the point where, he was considered one of the best players in the league, was an all-star, year in, year out, but he's turned into this player that, after injuries, after age has caught up to him, he's just not that real presence in the NBA like he used to be. So teams will be looking to acquire him basically as a free agent now. And with that in mind, people keep looking at the Toronto Raptors for something. They've yet to make any changes to their roster, really, other than waiving Alex Len. They've yet to make any real decisions about their roster since the start of the season. The Raptors now sitting at 17-19 at the All-Star break after disappointing loss to the Celtics, but they did play very well despite all the injuries. But the Pistons game that they lost, that is one that is going to sting. But at 17-19, a lot of Raptors fans are questioning this Raptors team, and I guess they have a right to do so, especially with the record. And they're looking at who we can bring in to help shore up this team, maybe increase our depth, make our depth better, maybe even make our starters better. So I've been asked over the last day or so about Blake Griffin. Some people have reached out to me and asked if the Raptors should be interested in getting Blake Griffin Sunday when he clears waivers. Should we bring him in as a free agent? So let's talk about Blake Griffin's fit with the Toronto Raptors. So obviously the Raptors have been struggling in the front court positions. They don't have that real presence in the paint in terms of a scorer. And Blake Griffin, could he fix that? I mean, I don't know about Blake Griffin fixing that. Right now the Raptors obviously run mostly Aaron Baines and Pascal Siakam. Those guys are starting the games. Obviously they also have Chris Boucher coming off the bench, who's making a real case for the Sixth Man of the Year as well as the MIP. So in the forward position, we've got a lot, Boucher and Siakam are very talented players, but they're not that real force in the paint. Aaron Baines is not quite that force in the paint on offense. On defense, Aaron Baines has been a lot better very recently, but no real score in the paint. So does Blake Griffin really help us with that endeavor? I don't think the Raptors really need a lot else. Well, let's look at Blake Griffin's game. Early on in his career, Blake Griffin was this hyper-athletic guy coming into the league, made the All-Star team, I think 5 years in a row, even in his rookie year, which is very, very rare thing to do. But Blake Griffin came in, this hyper-athletic player, playing in the power forward position, was a beast in the paint because of that athleticism, won a dunk contest, could just get to the rim at will, sometimes could pull up in mid-range, sometimes maybe he could pull up from three. But Blake Griffin was just a guy who relied on his athleticism to get him to the rim, relied on his athleticism to play defense in the paint, to grab rebounds, averaged a double-double in the first couple of seasons of his career because of that insane athleticism that he possessed. Was really one of the key figures in that Lob City era of the Clippers. That was a fun team to watch, but one that ultimately never quite met its potential. Chris Paul definitely helped out Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan with that team, made them better players, made them better themselves, but never quite got anywhere with that Clippers team. But Blake Griffin, he's been one of the better players over the last decade just because of that insane athleticism. But as Blake Griffin has gotten older, age has caught up to him, and injuries as well have caught up to him. He's been injured a lot, and Blake Griffin is one of those players that just relies on the athleticism. And now that he's losing that athleticism, we're seeing what Blake Griffin can produce. And the athleticism, like I say this about a lot of players who rely on the athletic factor of their game, they fall off very early because as soon as the athleticism goes, the basketball IQ cannot save them because they're so reliant on that athleticism. That's why some older players like Chris Paul can still thrive in the NBA because they rely on the IQ behind their games. The same thing can go for maybe Rajon Rondo because of how good he is in the playoffs. Playoff Rondo because of how smart he is in the half court, and that's where NBA teams thrive in the playoffs. So older players that have that IQ can really maintain a lot of their level. Now Rondo's not the player he used to be, but Chris Paul is a good example of a guy relying on his basketball sense. When it comes to athletics and falling off in terms of your athleticism, Blake Griffin has fallen off quite early because of these injuries. The same could be said potentially for Giannis in the very near future. If Giannis gets, maybe some injuries, I really hope he doesn't happen, but Giannis, a player who heavily relies on his athleticism to get those back-to-back MVPs, he's going to have to develop more of a basketballing game as he ages if he does start to lose that athleticism. So because of Blake Griffin's loss of his athleticism, because of the bad injuries, because he's being on the wrong side of 30 at 31 years old, Blake Griffin has definitely had some of his troubles over the last couple of years. In fact, this season, he's been pretty poor for the Detroit Pistons. You can definitely see why they are looking to trade him at this point because this season, a guy used to average like 58% from the field is now averaging 36% from the field. And Blake Griffin also averages 31% from three. Like his shooting stats just are not there. Blake Griffin as well has not dunked a basketball in 2 years, hasn't done it since 2019. So a guy, the Raptors want to look at to maybe bring in to shore up some paint scoring is not the guy who can shore up your paint scoring anymore. Blake Griffin is just not the guy who gets his points in the paint. He is a spot-up shooter in mid-range and spot-up shooter from three, but from mid-range, that era of the NBA is dying. The mid-range shot is just not a very good shot analytic-wise anymore. Now, sure, some guys like KD can make it work for themselves, but for a guy like Blake Griffin, he's only shooting 36% from the field, and the three-point ball is not saving him either. It is not a saving grace for him because that is barely above 30% on its own there. And Blake Griffin is a guy who needs a lot of usage to be good. He's a guy who needs to get on the perimeter, can, I guess, work well in the half court because he can create his own shooting opportunities, but even when he's creating those shooting opportunities, only shooting 36% from the field, it is a big struggle for Blake Griffin. Now, for a team like the Nets, who have so much talent already, they're looking at a guy like Blake Griffin because he's just another guy who can be a scorer for them and another guy who you can give the ball to and he can go and create his own shot and possibly get a bucket. Now, for the Toronto Raptors, his fit with the Toronto Raptors, we're already complaining they have too many guys who need the ball to be more effective. Now, that's not necessarily a bad problem to have, but when you got to split the ball, like a lot of ball-dominant players like Lowry, like Fred VanVleet, like Norman Powell, like Pascal Siakam, all those guys take a lot of touches away from OG Anunoby. That is one of the complaints that Raptors fans have been having recently because we feel like OG Anunoby is due for a breakout year as a scorer, but so many of these other guys need the touches that he can't quite get it to happen. Now, there was a game where the Raptors had a ton of injuries against the Indiana Pacers, where OG was able to thrive with the ball in his hand, and OG put up 30 points in that game. So, looking at the amount of players who really need the ball to be effective, adding in another one like Blake Griffin, who needs the ball a lot to be effective, needs to create his own shooting opportunities to be effective. And even when he does create his own shooting opportunities and gets the high usage and gets the ball a ton, even when he does get all that to happen, he still isn't shooting the ball very well at 36%, and he doesn't get to the paint like he used to. He is, again, a guy who's a spot-up shooter in mid-range and maybe can sometimes get to the rim. In his first season with the Pistons, he was an all-star. He was fantastic, made, honestly, a case for himself being MVP, averaging 24.5 points per game. But in the last couple of seasons, he has fallen off from that. In the 2 seasons since that very good season, very much fallen off. And this is statistically the worst season of his career so far. And sure, playing with the Pistons doesn't help. That Pistons team is awful, and the Raptors are awful for losing to that Pistons team, yes, but this Pistons team is awful. Blake Griffin did not help that case. The Pistons definitely didn't help Blake Griffin be better, but Blake Griffin did not help that team be better. And it was smart for the Pistons to just wash their hands after that and just move on and see what they can build in the future. I don't think they had a very good offseason. In fact, I think they had a pretty horrendous offseason, especially losing Christian Wood without even making an offer. But the Pistons, They are what they are. They're going to move on to the future without Blake Griffin. Now let's look at, again, the Raptors fit with Blake Griffin. To me, doesn't make sense. Not that the Raptors were really looking at him, but just because people were asking about it. The Raptors, the fit for Blake Griffin is just not there. There's too many guys who need the ball in their hands in this Raptors team, and working on Blake Griffin, trying to make him better, would not help our young core of players to develop. It would hinder the development process of a lot of the guys on our team, and Blake Griffin just does not solve any of the problems that the Raptors have. Maybe one of the problems Blake Griffin solves is that in the half court, you can give him the ball and he can create his own basket potentially, especially late in games. That is one thing that Blake Griffin could correct, but there's a lot of guys in the Raptors need to work on that aspect of their game that we want to work on this season in our transition year into what we expect to be a better next season. That's just a reality with this current Toronto Raptors team. And adding Blake Griffin would just hinder the development of a lot of players, and Blake Griffin just does not solve enough problems to warrant bringing him in. I think it's a bad idea. I will let the Brooklyn Nets, who are the favorites to sign him anyway, I will let the Brooklyn Nets bring in Blake Griffin for their team and add in a pretty stellar starting five of Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan. Now, that starting five in 2014 would be the best team of all time. That team would probably go 78-4, 78 wins on the season. But now in 2021, DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin are not the players that they used to be. But that Brooklyn Nets team is still going to be quite scary. But imagine that team. Imagine 7 years ago thinking about that team being a starting five in the NBA. Some scary thoughts coming from there. But as far as we go with the Raptors, we're talking about the Raptors. Not a good fit, a bad idea. I don't see any rumors about the Raptors being at all interested in Blake Griffin, and for very good reason. Just wanted to give my 2 cents on the fit for the Raptors, and the truth is, there is no fit. We're going to let Brooklyn take this one. Blake Griffin, let's see if he can revitalize his career. I'm rooting for players individually. I like to see players thrive in the NBA, but I don't want to see him thrive with the Raptors. I just don't think that it would ever happen. I just don't think that would be a decision that would make sense. Masai Ujiri is not going to go for this. So what are all of your thoughts and opinions on Blake Griffin? Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree? Do you think he would be a good fit with the Raptors? Let me know all of your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. But that wraps it up for me for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you are still here, please like the video if you like, and subscribe to Amateur Sports for more content just like this. As well, check out the live streams. Right now we are in our charity weeks, so right now we are raising money for Sick Kids Hospitals and the Canadian Cancer Society. There are a ton of donation incentives along with that. I will likely be shaving my head very soon as we hit the $750 USD tier. Right now we are just under $700 USD raised in our amateur hour sports community, so get involved. The donation link is in the description, or just check out the streams like the one we are doing tomorrow for the NBA All-Star Game watch line. At the end of the day, I believe what I say. If you disagree, that is okay. We'll see you again next time for another video.